Hello, Apostate congregation. Welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. For those of you that are just joining us and have never tuned in before, you're just new to the channel, running across the Mormon Atheist for the first time. Thank you for stopping along your journey and taking a look. What we do on this channel is we look at Mormon history, LDS history. So is what we're doing is we take old books that were written in the 1800s and we compare them to the Mormon story that we all know today. I am an ex-Mormon. I was born and raised in the church. I'm very far removed from the church, but my whole family is very much active, still members. It's never gone away. So it very much is a part of my life, and it will always be a part of my life. So when people say you leave the church, but the church, you can't leave the church alone. Well, I can't leave the church alone because my entire family is literally still in the church. So I go to the baptisms for my nephews. I go to the blessings. I go, I'm not anti-Mormon by any stretch of the imagination, but is what I do is compare notes. I look at the church history, what the church approved history is, right? That every Mormon historian, every Mormon scholar, 98% of every podcast that's an ex-Mormon and Mormon podcast, all podcasts on the church approved material. This channel, we look at old books that have nothing at all to do with Mormonism, the author of the book, right? It's very important that the author of the book has nothing to do with Mormonism whatsoever. I research the authors, I look them up to find out who they are, what they stand for, all this kind of stuff. And in my videos, I tell people to look at the preface of these books. So the book that we're going to talk about tonight is William Dixon. His book is called New America, and it's two volumes, New America. Okay, so in this book was published in 1866. Okay, and a lot of these books that I read, see, my thing is William Morgan, the Church of Christ. That's my angle, right? In Mormonism. Okay, well, through reading all of these old books, they literally talk about everything. And I don't really ever do any videos on anything else other than really William Morgan and Solomonic Magic and the Church of Christ and Joseph Smith's original church. So the last few episodes, I've done one on LDS Mormon politics. I've done one on Joseph's first vision. And tonight we're going to do one on polygamy. And the reason why, these are a little out of my wheelhouse, but as well, though, the reason why is to show you, because in my previous videos, I always say, there is so much information in these old books that you could do podcasts for months and months and months every single day on these things. So in New America, they talk about William Morgan, they talk about Freemasonry, they talk about all of that stuff, but it's called New America because the author of the book, in the preface, he tells you that he went to Utah. He went with them across the plains, right, on the trek to Utah, or one of the trek, not the main trek, right? Not that one. No, this isn't in 1866. Okay, so, and then he gets there and he's telling you about, he's in face-to-face contact with Brigham Young. He's talking to Brigham Young, and he quotes Brigham Young all throughout this book. Okay, it's a fascinating book. It's fascinating. So in this book, there's a couple of sections on polygamy, right? I'll read you the names of the chapters here real fast. Is that the right section? Yeah. Maybe that's not the right section. All right. Well, anyways, we'll get there. But anyways, here we go. Polygamous society, the doctrine of pluralities, the Great Schism. The Great Schism is did Joseph practice polygamy or not? That's the schism, right? And the schism, we're going to actually get to the schism in a minute. But so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters on polygamy in this book, William Dixon's New America. Okay, it comes out in 67, but he's there in 66. Okay, and there's 5 chapters on polygamy. The names of the chapters are Marriage in Utah, Polygamous Society, The Doctrines of Plurality, The Great Schism, Sealing, Women at Salt Lake. So I guess you could say 6. Okay, so before we even get to that book, let's talk about the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants 132, right? So in the Brighamite religion, right? I do say Brighamites because it's different, right? The Church of Christ is Joseph Smith's original church. And we're going to talk about the Book of Commandments from the Church of Christ, okay? This is Joseph's original church, okay? 1830 is when that church, excuse a little bit of water damage there. Okay, but apostates, I want you to go down to right here. I don't know if that focuses in or not, but that says 1833, okay? That's when this book was published, 1833. Check this out. The Book of Mormon from the Church of Christ. Does this also say 1833? This does not. This says 1990, 2006. But it's the Book of Mormon from the Church of Christ. All right. Anyways, that's significant because that's Joseph's original church. And these books come from the Church of Christ at Temple Lot in Missouri. I went there specifically to get these books and to ask them questions. I wanted to ask them questions, and they flat out deny Joseph ever practiced polygamy. Apostates, I want you to understand, there is no 132 in this book, the Book of Commandments. This is Joseph's original book of Revelations, the Book of Commandments. Okay? It ends, okay? It ends, apostate congregation. Understand this. At 65. I think that's 65. It's Roman numerals. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's the last one. And you can look at the date there. Revelation, the date, 1831, I believe, right? Yeah. Ohio, Kirtland, Ohio, 1831. That is the last revelation of Joseph's original church. You know, apostates, one thing that you have to understand is sometimes things are not said. Things are not talked about. So when something is supposed to be very prevalent in the day, and we on this channel, all of you, are reading these books along with me, and notice what is never said in these books. Polygamy. It's never taught. It's never even talked about. Apostates, I want you to understand, and TBMs, I want you to fully understand. If I could pin polygamy on Joseph Smith, the Mormon atheist would. 100%, but I can't. I cannot. And it's not just because of my own thoughts or whatever. Okay, it's literally what the books either say or what they don't say. Okay, on this channel we stay true to the text. The History of Utah by H.H. Bancroft. This is not B.H. Roberts. This is Hubert Howe Bancroft. Okay, he talks about polygamy in this book. Okay, there's no section 132 in the Book of Commandments. Okay, there's just not. I wish I could say like, you know, I mean, how can I argue something that's not there? It's not there. There's no celestial marriage. Hey, wait, but there is one for Emma though. Okay, let's look it up. I just thought of this just now. Just off the top of my head, I just thought of this just now. Let's find it. Let me find it. Give me 2 seconds, congregation. I'm almost there. Okay, here we go. So this is in Pennsylvania. This is a revelation to Emma given in Harmony, Pennsylvania, July 1830. Here you go. Right there, you can see the date. Okay. And notice the structure, apostates. Notice the structure compared to your BOM, your Book of Mormon, your Doctrine and Covenants that you have. Notice the structure. They're different. Okay. So here, let's read it. And apostates, when you will clearly know what this revelation is. If you know anything about the scribes and church history and all that stuff and how Emma goes with Joseph to find the lost plates, okay, you're going to know exactly what this is. Okay, so I want you to compare your Doctrine and Covenants to what the Church of Christ says. This is Joseph's original. Okay, here we go. A revelation to Emma given in Harmony, Pennsylvania, July 1830. That's all it says. Okay. Emma, my daughter, in Zion, a revelation I give unto you concerning my will. Behold, thy sins are forgiven thee, and thou art an elect lady, whom I have called. Murmur not because of the things which thou hast not seen, for they are withheld from thee and from the world, which is wisdom in me in a time to come. And the office of thy calling shall be for a comfort unto my servant Joseph, thy husband, in his afflictions with consoling words, in the spirit of meekness. And thou shalt go with him at the time of his going, and be unto him for a scribe, that I may send Oliver whithersoever. I love the way they talk. Okay, whithersoever I will. And thou shalt be ordained under his hand to expand the scriptures and to exhort the church according as it shall be given thee by my spirit. And it actually goes on. There's more to it. There's a whole nother page and a half, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. But we know that revelation, okay, as very different. But for the purpose of this conversation, there is no 132. There is no celestial marriage. There's no nothing. There's nothing in this book. So I wish I could show you. I wish I could give you something to say, hey, I proved this. But how can I do it when it's not there? It's not there. Okay? So let's get into New America, okay? In his book, New America, we're going to get into a couple of chapters. And I think you're going to be because this is the book, Apostates, that the story of where we hear about how Brigham Young backdated Revelations 132. That story comes from this book, okay? I'm going to dance around it because I want you to read the book. I'm really going to dance around that without giving you the direct exact quote, because I want you to read the book, because there are so many different things in this book that you're going to find. Joseph Smith's wife, is her name even Emma? Hiram, who is Hiram? What is the name Hiram even mean? Right? You have to understand who William Dixon is, right? This book comes out. He's with Brigham Young in 66. Joseph just died in 44. Okay? William Dixon, you know, he's telling you the story of Joseph Smith that he knows. And he's laughing at the Brighamites and their news story, right? Because he knows the story of Joseph Smith. He grew up with the story of Joseph Smith. So you have to understand this, the Mormon movement, they called them the Mormonites. The Mormon movement was profound. Everybody knew about it, apostates. And I mean, if you didn't know about the Mormon movement, you were kind of an idiot, probably, most likely, right? So he's telling you the story, and he's telling you that in the book. Like he's telling you what the Brighamites are saying, and then he's telling you what the real story is, right? And the story that he knows. And all of these other books, they all talk about it. And History of Utah by H.H. Bancroft really backs up. This book comes out in 89, in 1889. Look how thick that's like, what is it, 800 pages long this book is? I think it's like 799 pages is this book, okay? Okay, William Dixon's book isn't quite that long, but anyways. All right, so he's there, he's with Young, right? And he's telling you. But anyways, that's where that story comes from, is this book. Okay. Let's get to it. I'm just going to read you directly out of the book. So we're going to go to page 317, chapter 30. So one thing, though, with this particular book is you can look up a lot of different stuff with this book, but the page numbers and all that stuff are different depending on where you buy the book, what printer and things of that sort. If you look, see, I got this book from Kissinger Legacy Prints through thriftbook.org, right? Thriftbook.org, you can buy this book at. Okay. You can also go to archive.org, and you can listen to you can listen to it on audio, right? And read along with it as well, for free. It's free. But the thing with that is I like to have the actual book because I like to go back and be able to reference. I don't know, it's just me. And on the archive.org, when it doesn't recognize the words because of ink blots or whatever, it will spell something out, or it will say something that is not even close to there. And so there's a lot of going back and re-listening to it, where as if I can do it on archive.org, listen to it, and then have a physical copy and follow along with it. That's how I do it. I don't know. That's just me though. But anyways, let's get going here. I'm rambling. Where did I mark my papers at? Bear with me here, apostates. I got it. Oh, here we go. All right. So we're in chapter 30, okay? And chapter 30 it's only a few pages long. It's like, I mean, what, six 6 pages long or something like that. Yeah, 6 pages long. The name of the chapter is The Great Schism. Okay, so it's on page 317, The Great Schism, New America. This is volume 1. It's a 2-volume book. Okay, so we're going to read how the chapter starts. The dogma of a plurality of wives has not come into the church without fierce dispute and a violent schism. George A. Smith, cousin of Joseph and historian of the Mormon Church, tells me from the papers in his office that about 500 bishops and elders live in polygamy in the Salt Lake Valley. These 500 elders having, as he believes, on the average, about 4 wives each and probably 15 children. Okay, that's how it starts out. Okay, that's chapter 30. So let's get to where he's talking to Brigham Young. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to page 820. Okay, The Great Schism. So, without producing much evidence, this is going to be for all of you polygamy deniers out there. Anybody that's a polygamy denier or anybody that's on the fence, these old books they're giving you the scoop. I don't know how else to say that, people. All right, so this is Dixon talking. So without producing much evidence of the fact, the elders have stoutly asserted that Joseph has secretly taken to himself a multitude of women, 3 or 4 of whom they point out to you as still living at Salt Lake in the family of Brigham Young. Still, no proof has ever yet been adduced to show that Joseph either lived as a polygamist or dictated the revelation in favor of a plurality of wives, that he did not openly live with more than one woman is admitted by all, or by nearly all. And so far as his early and undoubted writings are concerned, nothing can be clearer than his feelings were opposed to the doctrines and the practices which have since his death become the high notes of his church. In the Book of Mormon, he takes God himself, in the Book of Mormon, he makes God himself say that he delights in the chastity of women, and that the harems of David and Solomon are abominations in his sight. Okay? All right, so now we go to an apologist. He gives an apologist answer to that. Elder Godby, to whom I pointed out this passage, informed me that the bishops explained away this view of polygamy as being uttered by God at a time when he was angry with his people on account of their sins, and as not expressing his permanent will on the subject of a holy life. Okay? So, you guys, I really want to impress it. If you are a polygamy denier, you have to look outside church sources, because the church it's a cult. You got to think in terms of a cult. A cult is going to tell you what they want you to know, what they want you to think, what they want you to believe. They're going to guide you in this direction. Okay, they may not directly say, right? They're just going to gently nudge. Okay? The question of fact is open, like the question of inference. Joseph, it is well known, set his face against Rigdon's theory of spiritual wife. And it is equally well known that he neither published the revelation. This is important. Listen. It is equally well known that he neither published the revelation which bear his name, nor spoke of such or spoke of such a document as being in his hands. Emma, Joseph's wife and secretary, the partner of all his toils, of all his glories, coolly, firmly, permanently denies that her husband ever had any other wife than herself. She declares the story to be false, the revelation of fraud. She denounces polygamy as the invitation of Young and Pratt, a work of the devil, brought in by them for the destruction of God's new church. On account of this doctrine, she has separated herself from the saints of Utah and has taken up her dwelling with what she calls a remnant of the true church of Nauvoo. Now, that is actually the original name of the reorganized community of Christ. Okay, that right there. Okay, the four sons of Joseph, William, Alexander, and David, all deny and denounce what they call Young's imposture of plurality. And it goes on. The whole chapter is like that. There's 5 chapters of that. Okay. The name of the book is New America. Okay. Alexander Smith has been at Salt Lake while I have been here. And he has suffered to preach against polygamy in Independence Hall. David he regards. So Young is talking about David, right? So Brigham Young is talking to William Dixon about David Smith. David he regards with the peculiar grace and favor. Before that child was born, he said to me one day, when the conversation, see, this is what's fascinating about these books, is they're giving you literal conversations that Brigham Young himself had. He's right now he's going to tell you about a passing thought that Brigham Young had. Just, a memory, an old memory of David Smith. You see what's in these books, guys? That this is stuff that the church doesn't talk about. It's nowhere in church history at all. Is this passing thought Brigham Young had of David Smith? Nowhere. No podcast, nobody knows that. Nobody except you. Do you see how fascinating these books are? Right? So that's what I'm saying to you, is there is so much information in these books. H.H. Bancroft's book has 52 pages. 52 pages of references. And you can look up every single one of them. Okay, 52 pages. That's a F ton of resources. You know what I'm saying? You guys, the story's out there. You just got to look. You got to go find it. If you want to, you can't go to church records. Church records are going to guide you in the wrong direction. They're red herrings, right? They took Joseph's church, the Brighamites. Brigham Young took Joseph Smith's church and hijacked it 100%. Because it's not. This Church of Christ is Joseph Smith's original church. You guys, I'm reading you. 1866. Brigham Young himself says it's all bullshit. He made it up himself. He says it in this book. I'm not going to read it to you because I want you to read the book. I'm going to read you all this other stuff that I highlighted. Because I'm not... I'm sorry, apostates. I'm really sorry, apostates. I get fired up about this stuff, man. And I get so sick and tired of people telling me that I am wrong, that this book does not say what it says, that this book actually says what it does not say. Do you understand? Because like I said in my last video, the first vision, some things have to be true, apostates. Some things have to be true. And if it's not true, then it doesn't work anymore. The lie doesn't work. The Brighamite sect of Mormonism is not the original sect of Mormonism at all. The Church of Christ is. Temple Lot. Okay? That specific Church of Christ is Joseph Smith's original church. That is where I got these from, the Book of Mormon. Now, when you read all these old history books, they talk about a book of covenants, a book of commandments. They never talk about a Book of Mormon. They all say that it's waiting, it's coming. Okay, Eli Bruce is saying it's coming. Okay, there's all this kind of talk. People know about it, but they never produce it. Okay, in '66, William Dixon and H.H. Bancroft in '89 says nobody can produce a Book of Mormon. Everybody knows of a Book of Mormon. Everybody knows the story, but nobody can produce a Book of Mormon. So I have found other writings that says when the Book of Mormon first came out, there was only 15 copies made. Then I have found other writings that say in this time frame that we're talking about, 66, like 34 to 66-ish time frame, there was only 15 copies made. So at some point in time, we can actually narrow that down with these books. I'm just coming up with this on top of my head, but we can narrow it down. Okay, the Church of Christ, Apostates, I showed you, 1833. And that date backs up what these old books say. Take away church history. We're not talking church history. We do not use church sources on this channel to prove or disprove anything. We use outside sources. We take the church's story, okay, what they're saying, and we go to outside source material to verify whatever it is they're saying. And a lot of stuff you can actually verify, but it's not told the way that we're told. It's the story is very, very different. Okay? The sentiment is what's different in these stories. The church has removed the sentiment and added persecution. That is what they hijacked Joseph Smith's church. And I can't say that enough. There is no section 132 in the Church of Christ. In the community of Christ, they openly say that Joseph never practiced polygamy. Okay? The community of Christ is the church that Emma started. Right? You understand? By the way, apostates, I've gone this entire time without welcoming anybody, without saying hello. I just got right into it. We're 30 minutes in. I haven't said like or subscribe. My manners are completely shot because let me tell you why I'm doing this video today. It's only been 2 days since I did a video. Joseph Smith's first vision. So last night, I was watching another podcast, and that podcast validates my show. Every time I watch that particular podcast, they're one of the more popular ones. Everybody knows them. They never name my name, so I'm not going to name their names, and I've had conversations with them about this. 2 in particular, okay? But they validated my point. They validated my points. Apostates, I was telling you the other day, right, about how those 2 podcasters that got bought out by the church. They caved. They got beat by the stick of Joseph. Right? So that's why we're not monetized. We will never be monetized, this channel. It's for that reason right there. And they already did that to me. They tried to do that to me. I've done videos on this, right? So they were talking about how there's ex-Mormon podcasters that are actually being paid by the church. They were talking about that. Apostates, what have I said on my show several times? Beware of these ex-Mormon podcasters, because they're not who they say they are. They're trying to they say just enough to get you to come back in, right? Welcome. I keep going off. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome, Apostate congregation. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This channel will never be monetized. It is not monetized. So the only way that you can support the Mormon Atheist is to subscribe, hit the bell, because I come on at just complete random times, days, whatever. So you never know when I'm going to come on. Like the videos, subscribe, share them, tell your friends, read these books, watch my old videos. Because this is all I talk about are these old books, okay? And I don't use church sources of any kind on my channel, of any sort. I search the authors. I Google the authors. I look at their intents. Why are they writing the book? Who are they? And I try to stay as close to Joseph Smith as I can. My area of interest is the late 1700s to his death, 1844, and everything in between that. And then I go to step 2 and say after his death to 1899. I stop at 1899. I do not go into 1900 whatsoever. All the books I talk about are pre-1900, and I would say 90% of the books I talk about are in the 1820s, 1830s time frame. So they're right there, very, very contemporary books, right? And they're telling you a very different story than what the church tells you, right? So like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get back to William Dixon. By the way, this episode, I would actually like to dedicate to one of the commenters, because they got me going on it. They're like, okay, well, they started commenting on polygamy, and I was like, dude, I don't think, it's been a while. I'm going to actually reread this book because it's such an interesting book. And then I'm going to do some more videos on this book, because in this book, the name of Joseph Smith's wife is not Emma Smith. It's not Emma Hale. Okay. It's somebody totally different. And he names the kids, and the kids are different. And it's a different story. Apostates. It's a very different story. But when you look up the person that he says is his wife, it sends my mind on a whole nother level. Who is that? Because I know who that is. I know who that person is. Okay. I'm not going to tell you. You got to read the book. I know who that person is, because when you Google her name, it pops up, and she's a very famous contemporary author. But there's zero information on her other than she's a famous author. That's it. Now, if you look at Eliza Snow is what? Apostates. You see how these stories and Eliza Snow was known for having pen names. A lot of these authors back in the day all had pen names, right? I'm just throwing that out there. That is something that I personally am working on. I don't know. I can't prove that. I can't nothing. It's just something I'm working on. It's an open running theory I have, but it's in these books. You can tell these stories, right? But it's almost like you have to read them specifically looking for that piece of information, right? And which, if you want to look at the Mountain Meadow Massacre, you got to read, this is a 2-volume book, and you got to read it just with the Mountain Meadow Massacre in mind. Then if you want to know polygamy, you got to read it just with polygamy in mind, because these books, you cannot just flip to the chapters. Like, you can flip to the chapter and get an idea, but that's not context. That's not how you read books. That's how people read the Bible, and that's why the world's so fucked up. That's not context. Okay? You got to start to finish. Okay? Whatever it is you're looking for, yes, you can flip to the chapter, but you're not going to get the context. That's not how you read books. In any world, that is not how you read books. Okay? So, yeah, that's my soapbox for now. For now, this time. Wait, next time, in 5 more minutes, I might have another one. Okay, Apostate congregation. Oh, we're not even done yet. What the hell? I forgot. You see, you get me going off. You get me going. All right, I'm only going to do a couple of more because we are almost out of time here. So I am going to do just a few more in the same book, Volume 1, William Dixon. Let's see if I can find a juicy one here. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're going to go to page 323. 323, William Dixon's book, okay? The schism on account of polygamy led, as it is, by the prophet's widow and her sons, in a serious fact for the church. Okay? The schism on account of polygamy led, as it is, by the prophet's widow and her sons. Okay? So they're leading the charge. There's no polygamy. You understand? A serious fact for the church. Even the judgment of those bishops and elders who in minor affairs would seem to take no heed for the morrow. Young is alive to it. For in reading the Chicago Platform, he can see how easily the Gentile world might reconcile itself to the prophet's sons in Nauvoo while wearing war upon himself and the supporters of polygamy in Utah. The chief, almost the sole evidence that were found in Salt Lake City in favor of Joseph having had several wives in the flesh is an assertion made by Young. An assertion made by Young. I was pointing out to him the loss of moral forces. Okay, this is Dixon. I was pointing out to him the loss of moral forces to which his people must be always subject, while the testimony and the cardinal point of practice is incomplete. If Joseph were sealed to many wives, there must be records, witnesses of the fact. Where are those records and those witnesses? I, said Young vehemently. Okay, you got to remember, he is talking directly to Brigham Young. I, said Young vehemently, apostates. I am the witness. I myself sealed dozens of women to Joseph. I asked him whether Emma was aware of it. He said he guesses she was, but he could not say. In answer to another question, he admitted that Joseph had no issue by any of these wives who were sealed to him in the dozens. For 2 other sources, we have obtained particles of evidence confirming Young's assertion. Okay? 2 witnesses living far apart, unknown to each other, have told us they were intimate with women who asserted that they had been sealed to Joseph at Nauvoo. Young assures me that several old ladies now living under his roof are widows of Joseph, and that all the apostles know them and reverence them as such. 3 of these ladies I have seen in the tabernacle. I have learned that some of these women have borne children to the second prophet, that's Brigham, though they bore none to the first, it's Joseph. My impression, after testing all the evidence to be gathered from friend and foe, is that these old ladies, though they may have been sealed to Joseph for eternity, were not his wives in the sense in which Emma, like the rest of women, would use the word of wife. I think they were his spiritual queens and companions, chosen after the method of the Wesleyan perfectionists. Now, if you look up Wesleyanist perfectionists, you will see exactly what that is. Exactly what that is, okay? With a view not to pleasure of the flesh, but to glory one another in the world. Okay, apostates. My point being in this video is there is no polygamy. Joseph Smith was not a polygamist. He was a whore. I've said it on several videos. He's very well known for going around and doing these things to women. 100%. The R word, the M word, all these things. That does not make you a polygamist. You're being a pig is not a polygamist. Okay? So some things have to be true. In order for the Brighamite sect to work, polygamy is a big part of that, and it has to be true. Because that is the reason Emma leaves. William leaves. You can look up William Smith's book. It's called William Smith's Book on Mormonism. And he tells you the very first line, the Articles of Incorporation of the Church of Christ, 1830. You got to put these pieces together, apostates. Don't listen to the cult source. That's my point. Okay, apostate congregation, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Again, this channel is not monetized. It will never be monetized. So the only way you can support the Mormon Atheist is to read these books, fact check me, tell me, here's the books right here. If what I'm telling you on this video is not in these books, please comment. And yeah, but you got to read the books. I don't want to hear no BS of that's not what that says, because if you've never read the book and you try to tell me what is or isn't in this book, I'm going to see you. Okay, I will see you. Okay, so like and subscribe to the channel, tell everybody, read the books, fact check me, comment. I love your guys' comments. I get so much enjoyment and positivity out of your comments. What are you reading? Have you discovered something that you never knew before? Comment. You know, so that does it for this episode, and we will come back with some more William Morgan stuff. Yeah, there's just so many things. There's so many things that you can, you know, but you cannot talk about at this stage of our game, apostates. All of you subscribers that have been following along, right? When we talk about Mormonism, you cannot bring up the subject of Mormonism without the Church of Christ, without William Morgan being in the back of your brain, because William Morgan is the first whistleblower. He's telling you this is coming, and they killed him for it. Okay, the Church of Christ in Solomon Southwick's book literally says Smith from Vermont is the murderer of Morgan. Gillis, Wells, Lawson, connect the dots, apostate congregation. Okay, there's more to the story. Oh, that's what I'm going to be coming out with. So I read a book the other day where they're talking about how Joseph had done something bad in the past, and he is now like professing his sins and creating this new thing called the Church of Christ, right? And he's embracing it, right? Well, what is that thing? And he compares him to another murder, and it's somebody else writing this story, and he's comparing him to a murderer in the Bible, a murderer in the Bible. And he gives you the passage number, and that's going to be my next video, is I'm going to come out with that. Apostates, the murder of William Morgan is solved as far as I'm concerned. It's solved. There's no more question. If you listen to the anti-Masonic books with an LDS ear, you will clearly understand what's going on and how that is the Church of Masonry that David Brainerd talks about is the LDS Church. Okay? This is what you get from outside sources. This is what you get. It's fascinating. Like and subscribe to the channel, everybody. And I will see you on the next go around.